My name is Bill Miller, and at the time of these events, my wife Lori and I had been married for just over 20 years. We first met during our college years and ended up getting married shortly after graduation. Our two daughters, Kelly and Erin, were close in age, just a year apart. Kelly had recently started her freshman year at a large state university about 2 hours from home, while Erin was finishing high school as a senior. Roughly 6 weeks ago, we dropped Kelly off at college. She moved into the dorms, rooming with one of her closest friends. Erin wasn't sure yet which college she would attend, but there was a good possibility she and her sister would end up at the same place. Despite their occasional squabbles, they had a strong sibling bond and genuinely looked out for each other. The house felt emptier without Kelly, and her absence left an emotional gap, though we were proud of her and excited for what was ahead. I worked as a partner in a major accounting firm, while Lori had a supervisory role at a local building materials company. She had re-entered the workforce once the girls were in school and steadily worked her way up the ladder, even though her degree was in English. Although I brought in a higher income, our finances were solid. We had a spacious home, newer cars, and enjoyed the comforts of a good lifestyle. Lori genuinely seemed to enjoy her job. That Friday, I decided to clock out of work early, about an hour ahead of schedule. Erin was away on a weekend school retreat and wouldn't return until late Sunday, so I was looking forward to spending some uninterrupted time with Lori. I thought it would be a good chance to reconnect, maybe go to our favorite Italian restaurant and rekindle some of the intimacy we had both been missing since Kelly left. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Lori's car was already in the garage. I figured she'd also wrapped up work early and was thinking the same thing, an evening together. I stepped inside, didn't see her in the kitchen, so I headed toward the bedroom to change clothes and find her. "Honey, I'm home. Are you in the bedroom?" I called out. "Yes, Bill. I'm in here," she responded. As I entered, I saw Lori seated at her bathroom vanity, applying makeup with practiced care. She was dressed in that familiar little black dress and wearing the pearl necklace I had given her the Christmas before. Her high heels were on the floor, and her overnight bag was half-packed on the bench, filled with lingerie and casual outfits. I blinked, confused. "Oh no, I completely forgot we had weekend plans," I said. "Where are we going?" "I'll be ready in 5." She didn't turn around. Her voice came calmly but deliberately. "Bill, I need to tell you something. I wasn't planning to say this until I was about to leave. I have a date this weekend." My heart dropped. "A date? You're kidding, right? You don't actually expect me to believe this is okay. Since when do we have an open marriage?" She sighed, like it was all rehearsed. "It's only for the weekend. I've been struggling ever since Kelly went off to school. I need this for myself, just some space. I'll be back Sunday, and things will be normal again. This might even help our relationship." "You're serious?" I asked, stunned. "You think running off with someone else for a weekend is going to fix our marriage?" She continued as though she'd read a manual on how to excuse betrayal. "You've had me to yourself for years, Bill. One weekend won't change that. I'll come back the same person. This might actually make our marriage stronger." I stared at her, trying to process it all. "How long has this been going on, Lori? Who's this guy? What kind of man invites someone else's wife on a romantic getaway? Are you seriously leaving me for him?" "No, silly, I love you, and only you. His name doesn't matter, and I'm not going to share it. I've arranged for an Uber to pick me up and drop me off, so you'll never even see him. We've had lunch a couple of times, yes, but I haven't crossed any lines with him, and I'm not leaving you for him either. I knew this would hurt you, and that's exactly why I tried to avoid this conversation until the last moment. I didn't want to betray you behind her back, Bill, and I hope that being upfront, even now, might help you understand. This probably won't even happen again. It's just one weekend. This man, he sees me, makes me feel wanted. He compliments me, tells me I'm beautiful, even though I'm nearly 10 years older than him. I'm not getting any younger, and I need to feel alive again, even if it's just briefly. I hope you'd understand and give me a sort of weekend pass. I'll be back Sunday, and when I return, I'll be completely devoted to making you the happiest man alive. I'm not planning on repeating this. The man I'll be with, he's married too, with small kids. He's not going anywhere, and I'm not trying to replace you or start a new life with him. It's purely physical, Bill. Just one out of the hundreds of weekends we've had together. I truly wish you could be supportive, or at least not furious. I've already made up my mind, though. This is something I will do. And if you could set aside your pride, you'd see that it doesn't have to affect our marriage at all. Please, Bill, just this one weekend. Grant me that without resentment. I stood there staring at my wife in complete disbelief. Who body snatched my wife and replaced her with this crazy person I found in my house? My mouth hung open, but my brain hadn't yet caught up to the moment. It was like watching a stranger in my home wearing my wife's face. Then, somewhere deep in the back of my mind, a thought surfaced, one that could turn this whole train wreck to my advantage. A small smirk tugged at the edge of my lips. So, you're dead set on going away for the weekend with another man. Consequences be damned. You don't have to be so harsh or theatrical, Bill, she replied, with that odd calm tone. There don't have to be consequences. She even used air quotes, unless you want there to be. But yes, I've decided this is something I need to do. Trust me, it's harmless. I'll be back Sunday, same as ever. Okay, I said slowly, so you're all in. I'm guessing he's the one feeding you the fantasy that you can spend the weekend in his bed and waltz away like nothing happened. I'll tell you straight, he's lying. He's saying whatever he can to get what he wants. But hey, you have until your Uber shows up to change your mind. After that, I'll make my own weekend plans. Oh, and one more thing, I added, I won't follow you or do anything reckless, but you agreed to keep your phone on, right? You won't tell me who he is, and I honestly don't care anymore. But if something goes wrong, if he turns out to be unstable, I don't want to hear about it from the police. Just leave it on. It's for safety. She looked at me carefully, weighing something. Then she nodded. Okay, I'll leave it on so you can check in. But only if you promise not to show up or interfere with my weekend. Deal, I said. But Lori, it's still not too late. We could work on this together. I know someone at work whose marriage was saved with the right therapist. Just call this guy and cancel. We can start fresh. She shook her head gently. We don't need counseling, Bill. I just need this weekend for myself. Now, please, let me finish getting ready. Then she turned back to the mirror, resuming her makeup routine. I thought of going to the den to make my phone call, but thought, hell, if she can have her weekend away, I can turn the tables on her, and I don't really give a damn what she thinks. I took out my phone and began scrolling through my contacts until I landed on the one I had in mind. As I raised the phone to my ear, I noticed Lori watching me cautiously through the mirror's reflection. She could only hear my end of the call, but that was fine. This was mostly for her benefit anyway. Hi, Sarah, it's Bill. Bill, wow, it's been forever. How have you been? Just hearing Sarah's voice brought a strange comfort. I paused for a moment, taking a breath as a rush of old memories resurfaced. Years ago, Sarah and I both worked at the same accounting firm. We hadn't been close friends, but we respected each other professionally. She'd started at the firm about a decade back and was assigned as my administrative assistant while I was still a senior associate before I made partner. Sarah had been exceptional at her job, organized, sharp, and dependable. I credited much of my career advancement to her support. At the time, she was married to John, a young executive. They were a few years younger than Lori and me, and they had one child, Jacob, after settling into their careers. Then tragedy struck. About 5 years ago, John was killed in a horrific accident. He was heading home from meetings about a corporate merger when a commercial truck ran a red light and slammed into his vehicle. He died on the spot. In the aftermath, I did what I could to help. Sarah and Jacob were shattered. I connected her with a solid attorney, and they filed a lawsuit against the trucking company. It turned out the driver had been under the influence, and Sarah ended up receiving a multi-million-dollar settlement. During that emotionally raw period, Sarah and I found ourselves growing closer in ways we hadn't anticipated. The attraction was mutual and powerful. We'd both admitted to feeling something deep, something that neither of us had ever felt before. But despite what we felt, I was a married man, and she deeply respected that. We made the difficult decision to cut things off before it could become anything more. We chose the path of integrity. No emotional affair, no physical relationship. Just a quiet goodbye between two people who could have been something, but chose not to be. Even after her settlement, Sarah continued working at the firm, though on a different floor and for a different partner, just to avoid unnecessary encounters between us. She enjoyed the mental challenge of the job and didn't want more upheaval in her life after John's death. Her focus remained on raising Jacob, who was still fragile after losing his dad. The last time we spoke, she told me to call her if things in my personal life ever changed. I promised I would, but never imagined I'd be dialing her because Lori wanted a weekend break for intimacy with another man. Not so great. I said into the phone, my voice flat. Turns out my wife just announced that we're in an open marriage now. She's going away for the weekend with another man, whether I like it or not. You've got to be kidding, Sarah gasped. Lori, I thought you two were rock solid. I thought so too, I muttered, staring across the room as Lori adjusted her makeup like none of this was even unusual. In fact, she's standing right in front of me, getting ready for her little romantic getaway. Maybe she'll be kind enough to confirm it for you. Hold on. I lowered the phone and turned it slightly toward Lori. Speaking loud enough for Sarah to hear, I said, Lori, would you mind confirming for Sarah that you've chosen to spend this weekend being intimate with another man? She's not sure whether to believe me. I said that loud enough so Sarah would be able to hear me as well. Lori knew that Sarah had been my admin years ago. Lori and I attended John's funeral together, and Lori made some casseroles and other things that we gave to Sarah to help support her in her time of need. Lori had always been kind in those days. She cooked meals and prepared care packages for Sarah after John's accident. She knew how involved I had been in helping Sarah and her son Jacob get back on their feet, how I connected her with the attorney that eventually held the trucking company accountable. Lori also knew that Sarah and I hadn't worked together in years. After we'd made the decision to distance ourselves, Sarah took a role in another part of the building, and I hadn't brought up her name since. We had ended everything, both professionally and personally, before it could turn into anything that might feel like betrayal. I had kept my vow. I will do no such thing. Lori snapped when I asked her to confirm her plans. This isn't an open marriage. It's just one weekend. Why do you always have to ruin everything? Maybe I won't even come back Sunday if you're going to act so ridiculously. She stormed off, grabbing her phone and calling her Uber. I'm going outside to wait, she said over her shoulder. Maybe try acting like an adult when I come back. With that, she zipped her overnight bag, rolled it behind her, and disappeared out of the bedroom toward the front door. I brought the phone back to my ear. Did you hear that? I did, Sarah replied, disbelief clear in her voice. I just can't wrap my head around this. Is she really cheating? Do you know who the man is? I have no idea who he is, I said. She wouldn't give me a name, just that he's married and has young kids. She claims it's not an affair, just a weekend thing, but honestly, I don't believe a word of it anymore. Oh my God, Bill. I never expected this from her. Did you call just to talk, or is there something I can do? Well, I said, pausing for a second. You might remember, when we parted, I promised I'd call you if my situation ever changed. And I'm keeping that promise. I just can't stay with Lori after this. Really? She said softly. Wow, that means a lot, Bill. She hesitated before adding, Jacob is spending the weekend with John's parents and actually had a date planned for tonight. My heart sank. Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about that. I guess I assumed, well, that you might not have plans. I didn't mean to disrupt your evening. Honestly, I didn't even know you were seeing someone. She laughed gently. You got it all wrong. I was in a relationship for about a year, but I ended it months ago. He wanted marriage, and I just didn't feel that connection. I didn't want to settle just to avoid being alone. She continued. Tonight's date was actually a setup for my sister. But I'll cancel. I'll just say a close friend got hit with some really difficult news and needed me. I'll lie, really. I just won't mention that the friend is the man I used to fall asleep thinking about. I smiled for the first time that evening. Wow, really? You canceled just like that? In a second, Bill. No hesitation. Jacob and I moved a couple of years ago. We used part of the settlement to buy a new place. The school district's better here. I'll text you the address. If you're still at your old house, I'm only 15 minutes away. I told her we hadn't moved and promised to pick her up in an hour. We ended up at the Italian bistro I had originally intended to visit with Lori. Sitting across from Sarah, it was clear that the connection we once felt hadn't faded at all. If anything, it had grown stronger. That night, and through most of the weekend, we stayed at her place. What we shared was more than just physical. It was deeply emotional natural, and long overdue. On Sunday morning, lying beside her, we talked about Lori's choice and what it meant for my future. I told her honestly that I couldn't continue in the marriage, whether or not Sarah and I had a path forward. Sarah turned toward me, her face glowing with that bright smile I'd never forgotten. "Well, mister," she said playfully, "I think we've got an incredible future ahead of us. I'd love to find out where this leads. And I know Jacob would be overjoyed to have you back in his life." We had another round of love-making to celebrate our uncharted life together, after which I left to return to my house to wait for Lori's return. While I waited for Lori to get back, I called our daughter Kelly at college. I told her as calmly as I could that her mother and I would be getting a divorce, and explained why. I didn't go into every graphic detail, but I told her enough. Her mom had chosen to spend the weekend with another man. Naturally, she was shocked and emotional. I asked her not to contact Lori or her sister just yet, not until I had spoken with Erin in person later that evening, when she returned from her school trip. That afternoon, around 2 p.m., I was sitting silently in the living room when I heard the Uber pull into the driveway. A few moments later, Lori breezed through the front door, tugging her overnight bag behind her like she was returning from a spa retreat. Her face wore an obnoxiously cheerful grin. At first glance, she didn't look like someone who had just spent the weekend cheating. But appearances mean little when trust has already been shattered. "Hi, sweetheart," she beamed. "I knew you'd be here waiting for me. See? Nothing's changed. I'm still the same wife who left Friday night. I knew you loved me enough to let me have that one weekend. And now I'm going to make it up to you. You'll be the happiest man on earth. Reclaiming your wife is supposed to be the fun part, right?" She winked and added, "I can slip into something sexy if you want. We've got time before Erin gets home." What she didn't know was that my phone was propped up on the side table, discreetly recording every word of our interaction. I wasn't doing it for blackmail. I just needed proof. For my kids. For anyone she might try to lie to later and paint herself as the victim. "Lori," I said evenly, "I know you hate protection, and I've had a vasectomy. So please, don't insult me by saying Richard used protection the entire weekend. You might trust him with your health, but I'm not going to." Her smile dropped. She looked down, finally grasping that her little fantasy weekend wasn't going to be swept under the rug like she'd hoped. Suddenly, her head jerked up. "How do you know his name? You said you wouldn't follow me or interfere." "I didn't," I replied, "but I hired someone who did. A private investigator. All I needed was the location. And thanks for leaving your phone on, by the way. Very helpful." She blinked. "He couldn't start tracking you until Saturday, since you ambushed me with your plans Friday night. I had to pay double for the last-minute job, but it was worth it, especially after watching the fallout when Richard's wife found out where he spent his weekend." I leaned forward slightly. "Did you know her father owns the company where both of you work? I'm sure Richard's going to enjoy unemployment come Monday morning. And your job? Well, I asked them not to fire you for now." Lori collapsed onto the sofa across from me, staring at the floor. "I can't believe you did this to me," she whispered. "Funny," I said dryly. "That makes two of us." She shook her head slowly, hands clutching her face. "He said this would reignite our marriage, that this weekend would bring us closer." I stared at her. "That's what happens when you take advice from your boyfriend instead of your husband. You didn't spark love. You lit a match that burned down 2 marriages." She let out a gut-wrenching wail. No. I don't want a divorce. I told you this was just one time. Richard and I aren't even a real thing. I've just felt so empty since Kelly left. I thought this would make me feel whole again. I really thought it would make me a better wife. I did it for us. Please, can't we try something? Anything? What about counseling? You mentioned that therapist your friend saw." She looked up, her eyes watery but hopeful. For a brief second, I almost pitied her, but I remembered something my father once told me. When you wrong someone, you can't control how they'll respond. I begged you not to go away for the weekend, but you called me childish and left anyway. I've never felt so betrayed and disrespected in all of my life. If you would have called it off when I begged you to, we could have gone to counseling and maybe repaired our marriage and figured out why you thought you needed your weekend tryst. Believe me, Lori, I've been feeling low too since Kelly left for college. But unlike you, I didn't secretly arrange a romantic escape with another woman and spring it on you like some surprise announcement. The moment you stepped into that Uber and headed off to that resort with Richard, that was the end of our marriage, whether you realized it then or not. Lori broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her legs gave out beneath her as she sank to the floor, crawling over to where I sat. She wrapped her arms tightly around my legs, holding on to me like a lifeline. "Please, Bill, don't do this," she wept. I was foolish. Richard filled my head with lies. The whole thing, what we did, it wasn't even good. It didn't mean anything. He's not even close to you. Not emotionally, not physically. Please, I'll do anything. We can fix this. I'll be better. I leaned forward slowly and picked up my phone from the table, stopping the recording. "Lori," I said, "I need to tell you something." She looked up at me with tear-stained cheeks and wide eyes. "What is it? Did you see Sarah while I was gone?" "It's okay if you did," she added quickly. "We both took time off from the marriage. That makes us even, right?" "Yes," I replied. "I did see Sarah, but it's more complex than just getting even." "What do you mean?" she asked, her face a mix of panic and curiosity. I told her how Sarah and I had developed a meaningful bond after John's death years ago. It was emotional, but never inappropriate. We never crossed any lines. No emotional affair, no physical betrayal. When we both realized where our feelings might lead, we made the responsible decision to walk away. I was committed to my marriage. I respected my vows. And Sarah respected them too. So much so, in fact, that she removed herself from my life completely out of respect for what Lori and I had. But before she left, she had told me one thing: "Call me if your marriage ever ends." And I had promised I would, never imagining I'd ever need to. "You threw away our marriage, Lori," I said flatly. "You ignored everything I said, mocked my pleas, and went ahead with your plans anyway. And in the end, Sarah showed more respect for our marriage than you did." "Oh my God, what have I done?" Lori sobbed, clinging to me tightly and pressing her tear-soaked face into my legs. I didn't flinch. "That makes two of us," I replied, keeping my voice firm. This weekend, when Sarah and I finally spent time together, it was like our connection had never faded. Actually, it had grown stronger. We're not just compatible, we're soulmates. That spark never died. She trembled against my legs, unable to look at me. I would have never reached out to her, never seen her again, if you hadn't shattered our marriage. But you opened that door, and now that it's open, neither of us wants to close it. I paused and took a breath. I'll be filing for divorce next week. I could easily file under adultery, but I won't. I'll go with irreconcilable differences. I'm not here to destroy you financially. I'll be fair. I explained that I had already told Kelly what happened, that her mother had spent the weekend with another man, and that it was only fair Aaron be told as well. I added that I'd be honest with him. Yes, I was now with Sarah, but only as a result of Lori's betrayal. If you don't try to flip the story and paint me as the villain, I promise that the private investigator's report and photos will remain private, I said calmly. At that moment, I think Lori finally accepted it was over. The begging stopped. The illusion faded. That evening, we sat down with Erin after she returned from her trip. I didn't share all the details, but I was transparent enough. She understood her mom had made a serious mistake and realized that my relationship with Sarah was real. She asked about counseling, but the moment passed. She could see that Lori's actions had made any reconciliation impossible. I stayed in the guest room for a few nights to ensure Erin was emotionally steady, then moved into an extended stay hotel while dividing my time between Lori and Sarah. Erin later that week, I presented Lori with the outline of a very fair settlement offer, even though the settlement money from John's death was in trust for Sarah and Jacob. I knew that I could leave Lori the house and a decent amount for alimony and child support without any financial impact. To Lori's credit, she never tried to shift the blame for our divorce onto me. She didn't spread false stories or attempt to make herself the victim. When people asked what had happened, she usually said we had grown apart. Some saw through that, of course, and when pushed, she would quietly admit that she had made a terrible mistake and that I had every right to walk away. Sarah and I got married not long after the divorce was finalized. It was an intimate ceremony, just close friends and family, but it was perfect. She looked absolutely stunning, glowing with joy. I was grateful and deeply touched that both Kelly and Aaron came and genuinely seemed happy for us. They knew there was no going back after what their mother had done, and they wanted to see me find peace and love again. Sarah, who was in her mid-30s at the time, convinced me that my days as a father weren't over. I had my vasectomy reversed, and not long after, we welcomed two beautiful children. Our first was a boy, whom we named John in memory of Sarah's late husband, though we called him Jack. A year later, we had our daughter, Jacqueline, named after my mom. We called her Jackie. Jacob and I built a strong bond over time. He had long needed a father figure, and I was honored to step into that role. Looking back now, I believe John would be at peace knowing Sarah and Jacob were safe, loved, and living a life filled with joy. Today, nearly a decade has passed since that life-altering weekend. Sarah and I are as happy as any two people could hope to be. Just recently, we watched Kelly marry her longtime partner, Tom. Jackie was the flower girl, and Jack proudly carried the rings. Jacob, now a confident and athletic high schooler, arrived with his charming girlfriend. I hadn't seen Lori in over 6 years. She looked fine, all things considered, but next to Sarah, the difference was night and day. Sarah had only grown more radiant since becoming a mother again. Lori eventually remarried. Her new husband, Stephen, was someone she met at work. I met him during the rehearsal dinner, and he struck me as a genuinely kind man. We had a quiet moment alone where he admitted that Lori had told him everything. She'd taken full responsibility for the breakdown of our marriage. I acknowledged that with a simple nod. Whatever cloud she was under back then, I told him it's gone now. For most of our marriage, she was a loving and committed partner. He agreed without hesitation. I also learned that Lori's job had been on the line for quite some time after the scandal, but she wasn't fired. She had to eat some humble pie, doing unpleasant tasks, being watched closely, but she gradually proved her value again. Ironically, she was eventually promoted to area manager, the same role Richard once held before being fired in disgrace. That night, Sarah and I moved through the crowd at the reception, chatting, dancing, laughing with friends and family. The joy was real. As a wedding gift, Sarah and I had paid for Kelly and Tom's honeymoon to Hawaii, along with a generous check to help them buy their first home. As the evening drew to a close, I noticed Lori walking over to Sarah. They exchanged a brief, quiet conversation. Then Lori turned to me. "Would you mind having one last dance with me?" she asked. Sarah said she's okay with it. I looked at Sarah, who gave me a gentle nod of approval. I took Lori's hand, and we moved to the dance floor as a slow song played softly in the background. It felt strangely familiar, like a distant memory from another life. Neither of us spoke until the final moments of the song, when Lori gently stopped and looked up at me. "Bill, I'm truly sorry for everything I did to us. I'm glad I met Stephen. I really am, but I never stopped loving you. Seeing you so happy with Sarah, it fills me with joy and pain, too. Pain for what could have been. Lori, for what it's worth. I forgive you and wish you and Stephen nothing but happiness." I had a chance to talk with him earlier, and he really is a good guy. He and I have something in common. We both love you. You're right. Sarah and I are incredibly happy. In a strange way, we have you to thank for bringing us together. Please forgive yourself and love Stephen and your family with everything you have. With those words, I leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on Lori's forehead. Then, I took her hand and guided her back to our table, where Stephen and Sarah sat patiently, quietly observing what was clearly a final moment between two people with a shared past. Sarah's radiant smile met me as I returned, and in that instant, I silently thanked the universe for bringing her back into my world, even if the path was more twisted than I could have ever imagined. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Was this how you thought it would end? Or did the turn of events catch you by surprise? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below, and let's start a conversation. If this story kept you intrigued, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or haven't yet subscribed, now's the perfect moment to join the community. I share powerful, emotional stories like this every day. So go ahead, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.